There comes a moment, not a quiet, passing moment, but one that drags its weight through your chest like a storm, when you feel it. The dip. The fade. The hunger that once drove you turns to dust in your mouth, and the fire you once lit the world with now flickers in shadows. You wake up, and nothing burns. You try to move forward, and the gears don't catch. You question your path, your strength, your reason. But that is not the end. That is the forge. Because motivation is not meant to be constant. It is not a faucet you leave running, nor a sunrise you can schedule. It is a pulse, a breath. And if you're wise enough, if you're willing enough, you will learn not to fear the dip, but to harness it. The greats did not rise because they never fell. They rose because when the flame went out, they became the fire. When Thomas Edison was told he had failed 10,000 times trying to invent the light bulb, he didn't lower his eyes and question his worth. He didn't say, maybe this isn't for me. He said, I have not failed. I've just found 10,000 ways that won't work. That is not the voice of someone riding a motivational high, that is the voice of someone who stood face to face with the abyss, and answered it. You want to win? Stop waiting to feel motivated. That feeling you chase, the buzz, the surge, the rush, that's the reward, not the foundation. If you want to harness motivation when it dips, you must anchor yourself to something deeper. Something unshakable. Something that remains standing when your energy collapses and your enthusiasm forgets your name. Discipline is your lifeline. When the world blurs, when your mind whispers lies and tells you you're not good enough, not fast enough, not gifted enough, you fall back on your code. Your system. Your rhythm. And not one of ease, but of steel. Because the disciplined don't wait for the sun to shine, they carry their own dawn. And before that structure can rise, before discipline becomes your spine, there must be belief. Not in the world. Not in outcomes. Not in the applause of others. Belief in yourself. Even when, especially when, you don't feel worthy of it. Understand this, motivation fades because belief fractures. When you believe your dream is out of reach, every step feels like dragging chains. But when you know, truly know, that what you seek is real, is possible, is worth it, you will crawl through storms with a smile. Abraham Lincoln lost 8 elections before he became president. 8 public failures. In the modern world, one setback makes people quit. But Lincoln understood something most never will, that progress is not linear, and pain is not the enemy. Pain is the pressure that sharpens purpose. It is the hammer that shapes conviction. And it is belief, not feelings, that keeps the blade moving. You don't wait to believe when the winds come. You build belief in the silence. In the mess. In the middle of the dip. That is where the giants are made, not on the mountain, but in the valley. And once belief is forged, you must clarify your vision. Because motivation doesn't disappear without reason, it withers when you forget why you began. Your vision is your compass. It is the image so vivid, so burning, so undeniable in your soul that it pulls you through the darkest nights. When your motivation dips, you don't need noise. You need clarity. Not vague goals or borrowed dreams, but a vision that stirs your blood. Walt Disney was fired from a newspaper for lacking imagination. He had nothing, no money, no credentials, no backup plan. But he had a vision so vivid it defied logic. A place that brought dreams to life. And because he refused to let go of that vision, even when he was mocked and rejected, he pulled the impossible into reality. Your life bends to the clarity of your vision. Without it, motivation is a ghost. But when you see it clearly, when you taste it, feel it, breathe it, you will move mountains to reach it. Not because you feel motivated, but because you are driven. And that drive, that storm within, must be paired with purpose. Not superficial purpose, not attention, not likes, not wealth, but a reason to rise that echoes beyond your own ego. When your purpose is hollow, your motivation will always rot in silence. But when your purpose is rich, when it feeds not just your success, but the legacy you leave behind, you stop quitting. Andrew Carnegie rose from poverty as a child laborer in a textile mill to become the richest man in the world, and yet his life was not measured in steel or wealth, but in impact. Libraries, education, giving. He knew that the purpose of success was not self-worship, but service. And that kind of purpose doesn't fade when you're tired. It deepens. So ask yourself not, what do I want, but who needs me to rise? Because when your purpose becomes bigger than your pain, your motivation no longer matters. You will move because you must. Because lives depend on it. Because you depend on it. And still, even with all that, belief, clarity, purpose, there will be days where your hands shake, where your mind spins, where the sky turns gray. And on those days, when everything inside you screams to stop, you must return to the anchor of all progress, action. Action is the great equalizer. When motivation slips through your fingers, when your inner world feels like a battlefield, do not wait to feel ready. Do not wait for clarity to return or courage to rise. You act. You take the next step, not because it's easy, not because it feels right, but because it's what must be done. Because forward is the only direction worth remembering. Henry Ford didn't change the world because he had inspiration every day. He changed it because he put his head down and built, even when his own engineers told him the V8 engine was impossible. They said it couldn't be done. He told them to keep working. For months, nothing. But Ford didn't need them to believe, because he did. He needed them to move. Eventually, they cracked the code. The impossible was born, not from brilliance, but from persistent action. You want to harness your motivation when it dips. Move through it. Don't intellectualize the void. Don't meditate your way around it. Get up. Get to work. Get momentum back on your side. Even a stumble forward is better than standing still, drowning in excuses dressed up as analysis. Because here's the truth no one wants to admit, motion creates emotion. You don't wait to feel motivated. You build motivation in the doing. You rise from the ashes by rising, not by waiting for some mythical wind to carry you out. But action without discipline is a match without a flame. Discipline is the engine that keeps you moving when the road is long, when the applause fades, when the rewards are nowhere in sight. It is not a punishment, it is freedom. Freedom from regret. Freedom from mediocrity. Freedom from the endless spiral of starting over. Marcus Aurelius ruled an empire, yet woke each day reminding himself, at dawn, when you have trouble getting out of bed, tell yourself, I have to go to work, as a human being. The man ruled Rome, and yet he practiced discipline as if he were a soldier. Because he knew, the war is always within. Discipline is doing what you said you would do, long after the emotion you set it in has left your body. It's cold showers, early mornings, showing up when no one claps. It's the dull, relentless, powerful repetition of excellence. That is how you rise when motivation dies. You replace feeling with commitment. But there's something deeper that carries you through those seasons, something that softens the edges when the weight becomes too much: gratitude. Not the surface level kind. Not a list in a journal you forget by noon. I'm talking about warrior's gratitude, the kind that survives failure. That survives heartbreak. The kind that says, I may not be where I want to be, but I'm still breathing. Still standing. Still fighting. And that is enough for today. Gratitude transforms your mindset from, I have to, into, I get to. You don't have to go to work, you get to build something. You don't have to train, you get to sculpt your body into a weapon. You don't have to suffer, you get to be tempered like iron in fire. The Stoics understood this. Epictetus was born a slave, beaten, bound, and still rose to become one of the greatest philosophers in history. He taught that nothing external can steal your freedom if your mind remains sovereign. Gratitude is that sovereignty. The ability to choose your focus. To anchor in what you have, even when the world tries to blind you with what you don't. And when you're grateful, you stay in the game. You stop sabotaging. You stop comparing. You start honoring the path. Still, even with gratitude in your heart and discipline in your hand, life shifts. Circumstances evolve. Challenges morph. And if you are not adaptable, you will snap. You will break under the weight of your own rigidity. The bamboo survives storms not by resisting them, but by bending with them. It does not break because it moves with the wind, then straightens when the skies clear. You must be the same. Flexible in strategy, unyielding in principle. When COVID-19 shut down the world, businesses died overnight. But others were born. Some adapted, shifted online, retooled their offers, pivoted their message. And those who moved with speed and grace survived. Those who waited, vanished. Adaptability is not weakness, it is intelligence in motion. You must let go of the version of you that cannot survive this season. Shed the skin. Evolve or repeat. The choice is yours. The dip in motivation. That's not your enemy. That's your invitation to reinvent. To become who you were always meant to be. And becoming is not possible without resilience. Because storms don't stop. People will doubt you. You will doubt yourself. And in those moments, resilience is your backbone. Resilience is not pretending to be unshaken. It is standing again even while you shake. It is refusing to stay down. You may bleed. You may cry. But you rise. Every single time. Nelson Mandela sat in prison for 27 years. Think about that. That's an entire generation of life behind bars. And yet when he walked free, he did not emerge bitter. He emerged ready. He emerged stronger. Because his mission outweighed his suffering. That is resilience. Not in avoiding pain, but in transcending it. And you have the same power. You are not made of glass. You are not here to break. You are here to burn and rise and build again. The dip is not the end. The dip is the descent before your next ascent. And every ascent begins with learning. Because the path to greatness is not paved with perfection, but with course corrections. With mistakes turned into milestones. With failure that is felt, understood, absorbed, and then transcended. Too many treat failure like a wall, a dead end. But the wise, the truly wise, see it for what it is, a mirror. It shows you what must change. What must sharpen. Where your armor has cracks. And if you're humble enough, if you're hungry enough, you'll stop flinching at the lesson and start asking for more. Socrates said, the only true wisdom is in knowing you know nothing. And that humility, that endless curiosity, is what allowed him to elevate thought itself. In your journey, that same principle applies. When your motivation dips, it's not just fatigue. It's feedback. What don't you know yet? What haven't you mastered? What fear still holds you hostage? Learn. Relentlessly. Not just through books, but through pain. Through trial. Through introspection. Success is a game of upgrades, and each time your motivation falters, it is often your system begging for an update. Let the discomfort guide you. Because once you see failure as data and pain as a teacher, you become unstoppable. Because now, nothing is wasted. Not the heartbreak, not the setbacks, not the silent mornings where you questioned your purpose. All of it becomes fuel. And in this symphony of growth, belief, clarity, purpose, discipline, gratitude, adaptability, resilience, learning, there's one final piece that ties it all together. One element that turns chaos into coherence. Vision. But not just any vision, the vision of who you're becoming. When motivation dips, it's often because we forget the shape of the person we're sculpting. We focus on the tasks, the grind, the deadlines, and lose sight of the why. Of the who. You must hold that vision so vividly in your mind that it becomes your identity. Not a goal. Not a destination. But a new standard of existence. Michael Jordan didn't just want to play basketball. He saw himself as the best to ever live. That vision wasn't a fantasy, it was an identity. And every workout, every loss, every obstacle was weighed against that vision. Does this make me him? Or does it pull me away from him? You need to ask yourself the same. Every time you're tempted to quit, to slow down, to give in to apathy, ask yourself, does this act align with the person I said I would become? Because the moment you stop seeing motivation as a feeling, and start treating it as a compass for alignment, your entire life changes. You're no longer a slave to emotion. You are a sculptor of identity. And understand this, that person you are becoming, they already exist. In the realm of potential, they are real. But they are waiting for you to meet them halfway. Not through words. Through warfare. Through action taken in the trenches of discomfort. Through discipline when motivation hides. Through choosing growth when excuses beg for comfort. There is no rescue coming. No lightning bolt. No perfect morning where suddenly it all feels easy. But there is you. Breathing. Capable. Stronger than you remember. Ready or not, you are being called to rise. Because in the end, you will not be measured by the days you felt motivated. You will be measured by the days you moved anyway. When the fire dimmed, but you kept walking. When the crowd was silent, but you believed louder. When every part of you whispered, stop, and you screamed back, not yet. That's how legends are born. That's how warriors are forged. Not in moments of comfort, but in seasons of doubt. You harness your motivation not by chasing it, but by becoming the kind of person who no longer needs it. And that is when the world begins to bend. That is when your name starts to echo. That is when you realize the dip wasn't the enemy. It was your summons. So rise, not because you feel like it, but because you were built for it.